I mean, you talk about how like working as a dominatrix ultimately is what taught you how to act.
It taught me how to act, but it also taught me my worth in a way. And it taught me um, how to have self-esteem.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, how's the book experience been for you so far?
Well, it's all very new to me. It's my first book I've ever written. Hopefully not the last, but it feels kind of like it's been a very long time in the making because this is something I've always wanted to do. I was always a very avid writer. I feel like I actually express myself way better writing than I do speaking for some reason. And it's just always been a huge passion for me. I actually wanted to be a writer when I was a kid, and people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I would always say writer. And then it was very quickly kind of knocked out of my brain because people would say, well, be prepared to be broke and starving. And so I kind of was like, oh, wait, and I shifted gears. But ultimately, I always had it on my bucket list that I wanted to write a book and at some point tell my story.
Why now?
You take opportunities as they come. And as I mentioned, I'd been, wanting to do this forever. And I had actually already been in touch with a book agent at Simon and Schuster, Haley Haderman, and shout out Haley because she believed in me when no one else did. And so we'd been like pitching this thing for a while. And then obviously we know when my name was splashed across the tabloids, it became more incentive for a publishing house to pick it up. That's how it works, unfortunately. So, but we jumped at the opportunity, and I have amazing publishers who literally let me write whatever I wanted to, didn't force me or didn't just, they were very, just very understanding and let me do whatever I wanted to do.
Does that go both ways? Like when your name is splashed across the tabloids, and it's a greater incentive for a publishing house to want to publish your book. Does it go the other way? Does it go that like, hey, my name is being splashed across the tabloids. People think they have this idea of who I am. This is an opportunity to let people know who I really am.
100%, 100%. I feel like when it's so funny because I always hear so many things about myself, and it's either that I'm like this mastermind, manipulative, like marketing genius, or I'm like this vapid, like dumbass. And, it's like, well, which is it, like, so this is a way I can kind of like rewrite my own narrative or like set the record straight, I guess. Cause I think a lot of people have preconceived notions. They maybe see the makeup, they see the clothes, and they just don't get it. Unfortunately, I feel like, the cool people always get it for sure. But then there is the probably larger group that just don't get it. And so, this is a way to just kind of like maybe humanize me and, show that there's much more than meets the eye. And, hopefully people will be able to empathize a little bit more and not, project their weird whatever it is onto me. I don't want to speak for them, but it seems like a lot of the time with celebrities, we kind of want them to be godlike almost. Like they have to be these perfect people, and like we project ourselves onto them, and they're kind of like mirrors for us. And but it's like it's wrong ultimately. Celebrities really are like just people. And and I like hate that term celebrity. It feels so icky when people like refer to me as a celebrity. I'm like, ew, stop, like gross. Um, it's just feels really like foreign still because to me, I'm just me.
I think it actually makes the art less valuable when we think about it as being made by like some kind of godlike figure. Like to me, art is way more powerful and meaningful if it does come from other people.
Yeah, for sure. And also like fame is this weird thing because it's like other people are doing it to you, but you are responsible for it. You know what I'm saying? So it's this really weird, and I don't want to sit here and like complain about it because I know people will be like, "Oh, poor you, wah wah," But like, it is very strange and should be dissected, I think, because it is a very strange phenomenon. Because ultimately, it's like I'm not the one holding a gun to your head, like Google me, like I'm not like doing that. It's you guys that are doing that. I'm just showing up and being myself. Um, so, but then it's very interesting because then it's kind of like this really heavy cross to bear in a way where like then, you just have to be perfect from here on out. And it's like it just feels so not sustainable, especially for someone like me. It doesn't feel natural.
Yeah. I think John Updike, the author, said celebrity is a mask that eats your face.
Yeah, totally. I can 1000% relate to that. And that's kind of why I just try to be like as authentic as possible and, still have fun with it and try not to listen to the noise. I just tune it out. I live in my own little world. I'm with my son like 24/7. And having a kid keeps you humble, because he does not give a shit who I am. You know what I mean? To him, I'm just his indentured servant.
Yeah,
So.
right. Yeah. He's not Googling you and seeing that how often
No.
you're showing up. I understand.
No.
It's funny. I want to talk a little bit about that, about like sort of your own kid's experience maybe versus your own experience as a kid. And maybe the best way to start things out is, I didn't know until reading this book that you came to New York when you were a kid from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about coming to New York when you were just so small?
I mean, I had been here prior because my dad's from New York and my parents actually met here, but my mom is Italian. And I had been coming here prior for like months at a time, but it's all very blurry. But when I moved here officially at 6 years old, it was kind of under the guise like, oh, it's going to be a vacation. You'll go back to Italy soon. And then that never happened. And then it turned into, well, your mom and your brother are going to come eventually, and then we'll all live here together. And then just my brother came, and then my mom never came. And so I just always felt very like confused and like no one was really letting me in on what was, what was on the agenda for my life. And so I guess one thing that I really, take pride in is that I really let my son know like the plan, we're going to do this, we're going to eat this, we're going to go here, we're going to see this person, blah, blah. And then, if he says no or doesn't want to, I respect that. And we accommodate him. So that's definitely something that I do very differently. But yeah, our upbringings are very, very different.
I mean, I mean, very much so. I mean, right off the bat, you write about being, I guess, kind of like an unsupervised kid. When your dad was at work, you'd stay home by yourself watching Jerry Springer. There's like a really kind of, there's a part that really kind of struck me where you talk about like sometimes he'd go to work and the easiest thing to do would just be to kind of lock you in your room and you would have to use the cat's litter box as a bathroom. When you write about little Julia living like that, how do you feel?
At the time, I didn't know anything different. So I didn't have any issue with it, but that's, when you get older, you're like, oh, that wasn't normal. That wasn't okay. I think when you're so young, you just think everyone lives like this, it's then later on, you have more insight on the rest of the world and you realize like, oh, that might have actually been really messed up and not okay to do to somebody, especially not your kid.
Does that make you look at your son differently? Does that make you look at the upbringing that your kid is having so differently than yours?
Oh yeah, it's night and day. And I guess because I feel like I had a pretty tumultuous upbringing, I just really want to bring stability into my son's life. I want him to know that I'm the same all the time. I'm not going to be in a bad mood and take it out on him. I'm not going to, I'm just not going to expose him to that. I want to preserve his innocence, and I don't want him to have to grow up really fast like the way that I did.
You write about your dad in the first page of the book. You write, you write to him. You write, thanks for the mistakes you made, which I turned into art. No matter where life takes me, all roads lead back to you. But please, whatever you do, do not read this book.
Yeah. And I went back and forth with that dedication so much. I would like remove it, put it back in, remove it, put it back in. Because obviously, I have a lot of resentment toward my dad, but ultimately it's like he has his own demons and he had his own childhood that he definitely has not come to terms with. So it's like, I can't, he's a boomer. So it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what do
yeah,
I
exactly.
expect? It's
Yeah.
like, but ultimately, like, do I want him in my life? Yes. Do I love him? Yes. Do I know that he loves me? Yes. Was it perfect? No. But like, like nothing's perfect. And it's like, if I'm going to hold on to that resentment and that anger, at the end of the day, it's only going to hurt me, And like, I'm the kind of person where if I'm like mad at somebody, it consumes me, like it eats me alive. So in a way, I kind of just have to forgive and try to forget, but it's hard. Um, and give my son the opportunity to have a grandpa, and give my dad the opportunity to be that adult figure that he couldn't be for me in a sense, because he's so freaking good with my son. And I'm like, where was this person? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, even if I'm like reprimanding him, he'll be like, don't do that, And I'm like, what? Like I would have been slapped upside the head. So it's like, it's just so different. But I think ultimately a lot of people can probably relate to that, having kids and then seeing their parents being just so great with them and just feeling like, why didn't I get this treatment,
One of the things you write about in the or early parts of your book, especially when you get to middle school age, as you start going through puberty, and you write a little bit about how you would sort of wear baggy clothes and try to sort of obscure your body that was changing. But it's very quickly established in the book that you were very sexualized very, very early. Boys are commenting on your body in the halls at school. Your first kiss is with a 26-year-old man. With some distance now, what effect did that have on you?
I mean, I have absolutely zero interest in men today. So that could be a direct result of the aforementioned. Um, yeah, I think growing up with my dad and my brother, and there was always a lot of men around. And in a way, I like wanted to be like them. Um, and so, yeah, I would wear the baggy clothes and just kind of try to erase any signs of femininity that were starting to emerge. But then I very quickly saw the kind of power in a way that I felt when I could use the way I looked to get something I wanted, to get the results I wanted. And then that became pretty intoxicating. So I went from like complete tomboy to like very, very slutty in like a matter of minutes. Cause I was like, what? I just I never felt, I always felt very powerless in my life. And now suddenly I'm able to manipulate just off of the way I look, and it feels pretty effortless.
It's a powerful thing if you feel like you have no power, all of a sudden it gives you a little bit of power.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that come up too in the dominatrix chapter of the book? I mean, you write, you start looking for a job when you're 18. You come across an ad on Craigslist that says, "Dominatrix dungeon hiring, no sex, no nudity, no experience necessary," and you apply and get the job. I really love the way you wrote about your first day at work there. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, it was, I had always known about dominatrixes and dominatrix extensions because I had a friend who's in middle school. I had a friend whose older sister was a dominatrix, and she would always come home with so much money, and she would get dressed in the mirror, and she'd have on the latex and the leather and the platforms and the fishnets, and I was just so mesmerized by her. So I had always known in the back of my head that this was a thing that people did. I didn't really know what it entailed, but it, wasn't rocket science. I knew she was beating up guys or doing,
Yeah,
things
something.
along
Yeah,
those
yeah,
lines.
yeah. Fair enough.
So, when shit hit the fan, so to speak, I, and then I saw that ad, it just felt like a no-brainer, because prior to that, I, worked in ice cream shops, shoe stores, pastry shops. I babysat, and it was minimum wage, $7 an hour. And it was like not sustainable at all. Like I remember just being like, how do people do this? Like, how can you live on this and go to school? You know what I mean? It just felt like just so impossible. And so when I saw the ad, I just jumped. I was like, and my friend's sister popped into my head, and I was like, yes, I'll go do that. And it felt pretty thrilling in a way. I was also a little nervous. I felt it felt kind of like the beginning of the rest of my life, if that makes sense. Like it really felt like I was on the helm of something really major that was going to change my life forever. And I can say that I wouldn't be here today if I probably didn't go down that road.
I mean, you talk about how like working as a dominatrix ultimately is what taught you how to act.
It taught me how to act, but it also taught me my worth in a way. And it taught me how to have self-esteem, because to be a dominatrix, you have to be empowered. I didn't want to be faking it. I really wanted to be that. And also to come from such a like very masculine, cold environment to this very warm, feminine environment where we're like overdosing on estrogen. There's like dozens of girls around, and pretty soon we were like a little dysfunctional family. But even so, I felt very safe there, even though there are men coming in and out. There's there's still rules. We're still being checked up on. They're not leaving, you know what I mean? They're not just hanging us out to dry. They're taking care of us. So it actually was very healing in a way. And maybe coming from such a misogynistic environment into the polar opposite, which is the dungeon where women rule and men are trash. And, maybe that's what every girl should do,
Yeah.
because out in the real world, it's the opposite of that, in movies and in media and everywhere is like the woman kind of being submissive to the man and
Yeah, it's like an antidote to the patriarchy, really. Because
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right. I understand
And
what
it
you
was
mean.
very eye-opening for me. And I chose then and there that was how I wanted to live. I didn't want to be submissive to a man. I wanted men to be submissive to me.
Is the acting part because you had to, no matter how you were feeling in those moments, you had to be able to walk through that door and be somebody else? Was that when you say it taught me how to act? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and also just like the role playing, the characters. So, you have a bunch of guys come in. We call them slaves in
Yeah.
the BDSM language. But I'll call them clients for the sake of this interview. So we'd have
Thanks.
5 clients come in, and one wants the mean popular girl at school to like tease him and call him a loser. Then one wants a nun. I don't know why.
Yeah.
One wants like a mean older sister. One wants a neglectful mommy. One, you know what I mean? So it's like the list of these guys like fantasies is like, you know what I mean? So I'd have to be like 10 people every day with a couple minutes notice, and it's all just improv. And you really have, and I remember just the first time just being like, oh my God, like, what do I do? This
Yeah.
is so weird. Like,
Yeah.
And then eventually with practice, it just becomes second nature. And then with practice, you start to kind of know what they want before they even want it. So you're picking up on cues. You're really like using your intuition and really reading not just what they're saying, but body language and everything else. And then kind of absorbing it, regurgitating it back to them. And so it's kind of like an art form, really. But it was a great exercise, just like a mental exercise. And I feel like it's probably why I'm so comfortable with improv today. I'm actually way more comfortable with improv than I am with like trying to memorize a bunch of lines and rehearse them. And like, I'd
Yeah.
rather just dive in and see what happens. I mean, that's more exciting.
I see what you mean. And you start thinking to yourself, I bet like, this is funny to say, you start thinking to yourself, like, I'm pretty good at this. Like, I'm good at the acting part of this. Like, I'm better
Yeah.
than most people at the acting part of this.
Well, that was another major reason why the dungeon helped me so much. It was because prior to working there, guys told me I was hot or like I was pretty. I was just always kind of like, they want to get in my pants. I didn't believe them. But then working at the dungeon and seeing like, oh, I'm getting booked more than everyone else. I'm getting more regular clients. I'm making more money than anyone else. I'm not going to say anyone else, but I was definitely one of the top earners. So that to me was a way that I could see on paper. It was proven, and it was really only then that I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am pretty and all these things. And that's when I really started to believe it, because there was like a quantifiable metric on which I could base this. It was fact. It was factual. And I think sometimes you do have low self-esteem, a lot of it is irrational. It's not real. It's in your head. So I had a lot of these kind of irrational ideas about myself that were disproven working in the dungeon. So for me, it was a very empowering time and not at all what some might expect from working in the sex industry.
You come out of that, doing a lot of different artistic endeavors. You start taking photography more seriously. You put out an art exhibit called R.I.P. Julia Fox. It was kind of like a living funeral for your past self. You launch a fashion line. You start to create a life for yourself as an artist. And I want to go back to the thing. So like, maybe the first thing I want to know is, in writing this book, did you notice that, like, oh, wow, I was really trying to I began to establish an identity as an artist here?
Yeah. Well, I'd always wanted to be an artist, but that always felt like it was relegated to very privileged children.
Right.
You kind of have to have rich parents to be exclusively an artist.
Especially in New York.
Exactly. Especially in New York. That might be different in other places, but here, you have to work a lot. The hustle is 24/7. And then, the time you might want to make some art, you're so tired that it's not happening, So, with the money and the privileges I was able to earn working at the dungeon is kind of what was able to secure that future in art and in fashion, and really doing the things I'd always wanted to do, but that just never seemed like they were in the cards for me. So I slowly was like, okay, I'm going to embrace this identity that I'd been suppressing for a long time, but that really only came through the privilege of money.
And I should acknowledge that you became well known within New York circles, like especially within New York art circles at that time. But to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I'm always really curious about what happens when a lot of attention comes at you very, very quickly. Because I think it's almost like a traumatic, not to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like a traumatic experience. Like just like one day you wake up and you are kind of everywhere. And that happened around the time you starred in Uncut Gems. Now, I should acknowledge here that the actor strike is ongoing, and I want to be like respectful of anyone's decision to not talk specifically about the work itself. But Julie, what was the experience like of I guess all of a sudden being on magazine covers and talked about because of this role and talk shows? Like, it seems like a big blast of fame very, very quickly. How was that for you?
it actually felt very natural. And I wasn't really that phased by it. I remember we were at the Toronto Film Festival, and I was with my publicist in the car, and we're getting out, and there's all these photographers, and it's like the first like real event for the movie, and there's fans everywhere, there's paparazzi, and they already know who I am. And my publicist was like, "Are you ready?" Like, kind of just checking in, like, "Are you okay? Are you ready?" And I remember I looked at her and I was like, "I was born ready," and just like swung the door open. And I was like, "I've arrived." It kind of just felt like the natural next step. It kind of felt like it was like that's where I knew that I was meant to be there. Like I had earned my spot there, kind of.
Why did it feel like that? That's not the usual answer.
Probably because of the particular project too, and the fact that there was so much of me in that role, you
Yeah.
know. So it kind of felt like a celebration of that. And
But you didn't feel daunted by all these cameras and by all, I mean, it's not just that, Julia, like you were just
not
talked about
really.
a lot. You didn't feel too daunted by that. I mean, that's very,
No.
like,
But that was always the case. And also when you're growing up in New York, it feels like you're in the center of the world. And it's very easy to forget that you're not in the center of the world and there's other places. You kind of feel like this is it. Like if you could make it here, you could make it anywhere. And I'd always kind of been like a hood celebrity and had this like niche fame, even if it was just in the streets or if it was just in downtown or if it was just in the city. It always felt like I was being talked about.
I wondered if it was because when you go through also what you went through growing up. I mean, there's parts of this book that was really affected by, like we just don't have time to get into today, about you dating this really abusive man who gets gets sent to jail and is threatening to murder you and your family, and you go to a psychiatric ward. There's one line about like when you're addicted to opiates and you overdose. There's a line in the book that's like, I think I wrote it down. Why does something inside me want to kill me? I was really struck by that, Julia.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like that. And I wasn't sure if it was like, I just think I'm invincible or if I just have like a death wish. But I was just always putting myself in like very dangerous situations and not really caring about the outcome. And that probably comes from like a low self-esteem thing, or maybe I'm just like so numb that I need like a really like ultimate thrill to feel anything at all because my adrenal glands are just like shot
Yeah.
from growing up here. I mean, it's could be a multitude of things. Um, but yeah, I definitely struggled with that for a long time. And it really wasn't until like motherhood that I kind of put all that away. And now I've just lived like the most basic, boring life.
Yeah.
But I have to be, like I always say that like my son is my anchor so that I don't float away. And, in some ways that's sucks because I'm like, oh, but I like want to go, like I'm such a thrill seeker and I want to go do something dangerous. But then I'm like, well, he needs his mommy and he needs me to be stable and secure and responsible and be the same every
Yeah.
day. I don't want him to see me hungover. I don't want him to see me upset, especially over like a man or something. Like that's just like why I don't even date because I just don't want to throw anything into the mix that might set me off because I know my patterns and I don't feel like I'm strong enough to be able to say no or not strong enough to like abstain from my patterns.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I wondered whether like living through all that was the thing that gave you like that made fame and all that tabloid stuff not that big a deal because hey, I've been through worse. Like I've been
Probably
through, you know what I
that's
mean?
part of it too. Yeah, for sure. That's kind of like how I feel today. I'm like, people can write and say whatever they want about me. I'm like, if maybe 10 years ago, a comment like that would feel like a kick in the gut, like now it feels like a breeze in my hair. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it does nothing for me. I'm like, I'm a rock. I have very thick skin. And more importantly, I just know who I am. There's nothing you could say to me that I'm probably saying worse things about me to
Oh,
me, or I haven't heard it before, or, I just know it's not true because I
yeah.
know who I am. So,
But but
yeah.
but it goes beyond tabloids when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I was struck by, and Julie, I feel like I don't know, man. Like when I read the last chapter of the book, or like maybe it's the last chapter of the book, which is about your relationship with Kanye West. You call him the artist in the book. I'll just say right now, I'm not interested in asking you anything of the particulars of your relationship. Like,
Thank
well,
you.
it's not out of some like moralisticness on me. It's just like that's
It's so boring. It's so over and done with. It's so irrelevant. It's like it's a 330 page book and he's in like 5 pages and that's all anyone wants to talk about. And it's like, dude, he's like, I swear, I promise he's the least interesting part of the book,
Yeah. The
But you
book
try
is
telling people
yeah.
that, man, they do not want to hear that.
The thing that did strike me about that part was that it was beyond tabloids. Is that through that relationship and coming out of that relationship, there were like employment opportunities that were declined to you. That, there were employment opportunities that were offered to you because of the relationship that you were in. And there were employment opportunities that were taken away from you once you got out of that relationship. That to me, like that impact on you is what really struck me about that chapter.
Yeah. And that happened like almost immediately. Like, I had a movie role that was secured and they were like, oh, like given all the tabloid stuff, it just seems like a little bit much. And there was like another small like branding thing that was taken away. And then there was like a denim company that was that he had gotten me the deal. But then once we broke up, it was like, oh, well, the deal was contingent on you being his girlfriend. So sorry. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of that happening. And I was frustrated, of course, but every no that I hear is like more fuel for me to like prove them wrong or like to just keep going and like get there myself.
The end of the book, no, when you open the book, the first thing you see is, I wrote this down, sometimes you have to burn your life down in order to experience the life that is truly meant for you. We've done a lot of looking back talking to you about this book, and I think with a book like this, it is a lot of looking back on your childhood and all the things you went through in your kind of insane life, Julia. To be honest, like it's a wild life you've led up to this point. How do you see yourself today?
I mean, I hate saying this because I hate sounding like a cliche, but like I really see myself as a mom. And I remember when I was pregnant and I would like see like moms on Instagram and they'd have like so and so's mom in their bio. And I'd always be like, "Ugh, I'll never be like that, like I'll never
Yeah.
like, just be a mom,
Yeah.
I'm an artist, I'm this, I'm that." And now that I'm a mom, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm literally just Valentino's mom, like it's fine. It's okay. I wear it proudly. And I don't know why I had such a strong aversion to that kind of thinking prior, probably because I was just so afraid to like lose my identity. And I can say that I lost it, but I can say that that was probably a blessing. I probably couldn't have gone on much longer as
Yeah.
that version of Julia Fox. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm not that person anymore. And that's okay. It's fine. I feel like I've lived a lot of life and it's okay, but I'm not living in that way anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if it's so much you lived a lot of life. To me, like you survived a lot of life. That's what I got.
Yeah.
Like you got through a lot of life here, Julia, thanks so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was such a nice conversation. It was nice to meet you.